Welcome back to Let's Build a Sketch App. I'm Brian Meermans, an instructor with Bloom Tech, and today I'm going to teach you to add restrictions to your code. Restrictions? Yeah. Sometimes we want to limit when our code does certain actions. For instance, today we'll learn how to restrict our drawing to occur when the mouse button is held down and the cursor is inside the lines. This will introduce the concept of conditionals, or if statements. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, welcome back. We are now ready to start adding restrictions. Now, I've said that word before, but it's not really a Java term, but I want to show you what I mean by that. We currently have a project that we can now start drawing on. So if I put my mouse in here, I'll start drawing on it. But if you think about it, there's some really bad problems with it. This is supposed to be a sketch pad, and the outside is supposed to be a border. Why are we able to draw on a border? Let's say this is a signature pad. You should be able to sit here and sign your name, but why is it that when I sign it, I'll go way off of there and it's all over the place? And I don't even have to have my mouse down. It's currently just drawing anywhere I go. I can't even stop it. We'd like to put some restrictions on it. And to do that, we're adding in the concept of conditionals. Conditionals is a fancy term to say a question that has either a true or a false response. We're going to say, hey, if something is true, we're going to do this code. We also could do, if something is false, do this code. But let's just keep the concept. If something is true, we want to do this code. To get to that point, I want to first take a moment to figure out what is a conditional and what does it mean to be a true and false value. So let's pause right there and just look at some notes. Okay, in Java, a value is either going to be an integer or a string where it's a word or a phrase, or it's going to be a decimal, but it could be lots of other types of things. And one of the options it could be is called a Boolean. I'll write that word out because it's kind of a weird way of spelling it. Boolean. Boolean means a value that is either true or false. So maybe you have a situation where you're trying to get into a movie theater and you either have a ticket or you don't have a ticket. So having a ticket would be a true or false value. That might be a Boolean value. Booleans can be stored into their own variables. So you could make your own variable, like a Boolean variable called maybe as ticket. And it could either be a true or false value. Maybe I don't have a ticket, so mine would be false. False is actually a keyword Java uses you can type in yourself. We won't need it for this project, but we could have it. If you, on the other hand, had a ticket, you could make it equal to true. True is the other keyword. So we have the ability to actually store the value true or false. But Java also has the ability to compare things to find out if they are a true or false comparison. For example, I might ask a number, are you equal to a certain value? Maybe I have a variable age, and I want to know if age is or is not over a certain value. Well, you can use things that you learned in math classes over the years, or things like greater than signs. Maybe if your age is greater than, 10, you can do some action that you couldn't before. Or maybe your age is less than 50, then you can do some other action that you couldn't do before. Maybe if your age is equal, double equal sign in Java is how you do that. If your age is equal to exactly 4, then there's some special thing that happens. Maybe it's your birthday and at 4 years old, it's a special situation. So we have some very common symbols you're used to, except for this double equal sign is how Java uses to compare two values. And so that's if you had some variable. If I could ask just two direct values, something like this, I could say, is 1 less than 5? The answer would be true. That would calculate the value true. I could even store it if I want to. Now we're getting a little off topic here, but we could do it. You could say like, is 1 less than 5? I'll make a variable that's a Boolean value and set it equal to the result of the calculation of 1 less than 5. So we have this capability of asking questions. Something could already be a true or false. Maybe it's a variable that already is a true or false. Maybe it's a calculation doing a math comparison. And there's lots of these comparisons. So you can do greater than, you can do greater than or equal to, where you have both. You're either greater than or equal to something. You can even do not equal to. So if I could say if age is not equal to 10, then whatever the action is that happens. Or if you're not equal to 0, maybe you're not a brand newborn, then something happens. But these are a handful of things you just got to have a general idea of. You can compare two values. Now, why we're going to do this, though, is we want to ask questions. And so in Java, we have questions that can be asked and can change what our code does. Questions that make our code branch, what we call this. So we have this code that goes usually linearly down the line. But if we have a question, we have a branch and it says, if that's true, go that way. If it's not, keep going. So the way they do that in Java is what's called an if statement. If statement, literally if. It's a keyword, we just type it. And in parentheses, we ask a question. We put these curly brackets in to say, what do we want to do if that question was true? So let me kind of fill that in. If some question, whatever that question is, and then if that some question, whatever that's got to be a true or false statement, if it's true, what do you want to have happen? True, resulting code to run here. That's an if statement. So let me put that together now and just kind of think this through. Let's say I have a ticket called has ticket. And if I have a ticket, I'm allowed to go into a movie theater. I'm going to write not quite Java code, but close enough. If I need something that's a true or false statement. Now, has ticket already is a Boolean value. So I can actually type in if has ticket. That's true or false. If you have a ticket, then whatever the code that goes inside here that, take the ticket away, maybe someone has ticket becomes false because they take it from you. But you're able to, theater.enter and go into the theater. So someone takes your ticket away from you and you enter the theater. That's just fake code for what it is, but it's very close to what real code would be because I don't know if this is actually a thing, but there we go. So we're going to take that concept. We've now seen what an if statement is and what Booleans are. We're going to put that into our code and figure out how do we restrict our mouse to only working in one of two situations. We need the mouse to be pressed. We need to actually have it pressed down. Right now, we only know how to get the X and Y coordinates of a mouse, but if it's pressed, we can find out if that's true or false. We also want to make certain that the mouse is actually within this white border. We don't want to draw when it's outside of it. So we got to figure out how do we ask a question that puts both those together. Let's start with mouse pressed. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the mouse's documentation to see what it has the capability of doing. So go to the documentation and see the mouse info information. I'll open a new tab. Let's take a look at this. Actually, I'm going to close the tutorial this time and just have just the code open. So if we look at the mouse info, we already have used in the past the ability for a mouse to get its X and its Y value. What you may not have looked at is we have these other two methods called isMouseDragged and isMousePressed. And if you notice on the left, they do not give back integers and they're not void, which means they do give back an answer. And the answer type they give back is Boolean. Just learn that Boolean is a true or false value. So these particular methods give you back a true or false response. So to use them, we'll have to ask the mouse, hey mouse, is your mouse dragged, parenthesis, parenthesis, or hey mouse, is your mouse pressed? Pressing means to just put your mouse button down. That's it. Just push it down and then let go. Whereas drag means to have it already down and then be dragging it as you go. So that's the two differences. So we want to figure out how do we write this into an if statement that says, if the mouse is dragged, and only if the mouse is dragged, do we want to make these lines appear? How do we add that to our code? Go over to our code. At the current moment, we have this one line of code right here is what is making our code currently draw lines. We only want it to occur if the mouse is currently being dragged. So what we're going to do is right above that, we're going to add an if statement. So follow along with me. We need an if statement. When I write an if statement, I always start it off just this way. If, parentheses, parentheses, and then I put my curly brackets in. And the interior code that I want to run is going to go inside here. My question is going to go there. That's how I always write an if statement. And for the moment, let's just try this only. I'm going to take this draw line command. I'm going to put it up in there. So I'm just moving it. So now it says, if something is true, I'd like to draw a line. Maybe I'd also like to add in these last mouse X and last mouse Y into there, but let's just temporarily leave those out. So what is the question I need to ask? I really want to ask, is the mouse pressed? Is the mouse pressed? How am I going to ask that correctly? Well, we just saw that the mouse info class has a method called isMouseDragged, not pressed, dragged. I typed that wrong. If the mouse is dragged, I'd like to do it. So how do we get our mouse to ask that question? It's mouse info is our mouse dot. We can ask the is, what is it called? Is mouse dragged. That is a true or a false result. Is mouse dragged. It is a method, which means it does need those parentheses. Now I can say, if the mouse is dragged, draw our line, but don't do it otherwise. This is now in the if statement, which means it only occurs if we actually have it true. I'm going to go ahead and put an enter on these commas so I can see a little bit better. So you can see that it's all lined up inside. It's all in what's called the body of the if statement. That is interior. If the if statement is true, we'll do those things, but not otherwise. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay. Let's see if we have put a restriction that actually works. So now I move my mouse around and no longer am I just getting drawings anywhere. But if I hold my mouse button down, I get drawings again. Look at that. So much better. That is so much better. So I could actually try to write something like hello, actually not have to do cursive the whole time. That is just a heck of a lot better. That was our first restriction. But the problem is, look up here. I'm just drawing outside the lines, and that's just not good. I don't like that. I want to be able to draw only when I'm interior the lines. So, what kind of question could we add that would say only if this is the case? So, what we really want is we want to ask more than one question. We want to say if the mouse is dragged and our location of our mouse is within this interior white box. And we do that by asking a compound question. So right now, this if statement, I'll go ahead and block it off so you can see it a little better. That if statement just says if the mouse is dragged. That's it. If the mouse is dragged, do something. But we're allowed to add in two other types of symbols into our if statements. We can add in either a double ampersand, which says if something and something else is true. If both things are true, then we'll run this code. The other option is a double vertical line. This is above your enter key. So you'll have to hit the shift key and hit enter. But that vertical line is a way to say or. Now it says if the first question is true or the second question is true. And potentially you could ask many things. You could say like, if this and this and that again, that too, whatever. You can ask four different, now all four would have to be true for this if statement to be true. So that's a compound if statement. So the question is, can you think through any kind of logic that would say, if the mouse is down and I'm within this white area only? Can you think of anything logically? There's no built-in this white area method. That doesn't exist. If you were to look around in any of the other classes, any of the documentation, you won't find one. So what we're going to use instead is just some math comparisons. I want to make certain my mouse is left of that line. I want to make certain my mouse is right of that line. I'm going to make it below this line, but above that one. So I got to think about what are all the comparisons that would make sense for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an and here, where it has to be four different things. And I'm going to put enter so it's not one long line. So I'm going to ask if the mouse is dragged and something else. Well, what do I want to do? Let's start with just this side right here. I want to be right of that line. So right would be my x coordinate. So I can ask my mouse info for its current x coordinate. Now that's not a question. That's just a number. What do I want to know about it? I want to know if it's right of this thing. Well, if you remember our border, we made our border be 30 pixels wide. And so to be right of that, then our x coordinate has to be greater than 30. Think about that. See if that makes sense in your own head. If my x coordinate is greater than 30, then I should be able to draw a line. That's not the only restriction. I need three other restrictions. I need the top, the bottom, and the right. I'm going to go ahead and do the top with you. So I'll do another and question. And, oops, let's go ahead and put that in the same line. And let's do the mouse infos. Let's say the y coordinate. Let's say the top line. I want to be below this line. Now, if you remember, y0 is up here and y at 400 is down there. So what would it mean to be below that line? Well, that would also be to be greater than 30. I'm going to stop right there, run this, and see if we're restricting ourselves to only being where your mouse has to be down, and the mouse X has to be good, and the mouse Y has to be good. Okay, let's see. Mouse is not down. Mouse is down. Drawing. Look at that. I didn't go above. Oh, I did go above the line. Why did I go above the line? Any ideas? And the reason is that I actually wasn't above the line. I actually drew a line to right about there, for example. And what's happening is my old X coordinate, my old Y coordinate are way up top. So when it connected outside. I would like to make it so that these X and Y coordinates absolutely must be in the if statement. So I'd like to say only if my mouse is in the right location do I update the X and Ys. That way, I don't have a situation where I'm recording the last X and Y position of the mouse, but they were outside of the boundaries. So let's see if that does anything better for our program. Okay, we'll ignore that first one. Look at that. So much better. Can't go out. Now, challenge for you. Can you make it so that the bottom and the right also don't let us go out of the bounds? Pause right here. Attempt that challenge on your own. All right, solution. What I would have done is an extra 2 if statement parts to this. So an extra 2 parts of the compound question. I want to know if the mouse infos get X. This time I want to know if it's before that right wall. So if it's less than something, I have to think about what that number is. And I have to think, well, if the whole thing is 600 wide, 30 pixels on each side, Does it matter? I just want to be 30 pixels further away from the rightmost wall. So I'm going to write 570. If it's less than 570, I feel like I'm good. And for the y coordinate, again, it's 400 pixels tall. So if it's less than 30 away from the bottom, so I could write 307. Oops, if it's less than 307. And just as a better idea here, I could have written something more like the screen's get width minus 30. And even better, I could figure out a way to make that into a variable so I never have to think about the number 30 ever again. I just write less than margin width or something. But let's go ahead and leave it as was because we're not trying to make this a perfect program. We're trying to make the ideas sink in. And so there we go. I'm going to add one last part into this, which is I want to make certain that the first time someone ever presses their mouse, ever, then we update the last X and last Y immediately. So I'm going to put another if statement on here that says, if, and instead of mouse dragged, I'm going to say if mouse info dot is mouse pressed. Is that what it's called? Double check. It's called is mouse pressed. If the mouse has been pressed, that means it's the first time they pressed it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically update the last X and Y to be that location. That way I don't have the last X and Y just randomly set up somewhere. So let's go ahead and think that through and see if that makes sense. So now, the moment you touch your mouse, you set your last X and Y coordinate, and that means that for the rest of the time, you never have a drawing that's just randomly off the edge. I think I closed my output. There we go. Much better. And can't go off the edge. So you've just written your first conditionals. And not only your first conditionals, you've written a conditional that includes comparisons with math and Boolean calculations and compound questions. That's a lot to do on your first time seeing conditionals, but hopefully the concept makes sense.
Isn't programming great? I'm so glad you're getting a taste of this versatile programming language, in part because it's just plain fun, in part because of what learning Java can lead to. I'm talking about jobs, like great jobs that pay really well, even for people who just finished their Bloom Tech training. I'm thinking of our first backend development graduates. All of our graduates who started looking for jobs found jobs. We are still a young program, but that means 29 out of our 29 people who so far have found amazing backend careers, and they're earning more than 6 figures on average. Yeah, that's their first job after graduating from Bloom Tech. The truth is, you don't need to be a genius to get these jobs. You need an in-depth curriculum taught by expert instructors, career support to help with the job hunt, and hard work. You don't need to take my word for that. You can just look at the results of every one of our backend developer graduates. Take a peek at bloomtech.com/Java to learn more. Then make your way back to Replit for day 5 of Let's Build a Sketch App. See you then.